let's talk about the big one, the one that everyone's been talking about and gabbing about and, basically the buzz. The buzz is that last week's episode of SMARK Guys was the most watched, the most engaged, the most restreamed, the most clipped, the most commented on, and the most profitable episode of SMARK Guys that I have had since the show relaunched. It absolutely topped all other episodes, including every episode that PPP ever arrived on or guest starred in, because guess what? We had our first ever guest co-host, Ethan Ralph. All right? So let's talk about exactly how things went. Okay, first off, the show went for just under 3 hours. It did go long. And the reason it went long was a couple of reasons, I would say. Number one, it was the first time I ever had Ethan on a show. So we did talk a little bit up front earlier that was off topic. It had nothing to do with wrestling, right? I was talking about the former host and stuff like that. And that's always going to take some time, right? So I knew that going in that we were going to have some time that was dedicated to non-wrestling, even though the majority of the show was dedicated to wrestling and wrestling commentary. It took some time early on, all right? And to be very honest, at the end of the show, Ethan got tired, all right? And he did. And you could tell he started to ramble. He started to almost slur and start to fall asleep. You could tell. Now, I talked to him after the show, and he said, yeah, what happened was he's not used to doing streaming that late ever. He almost never streams that late. So because of that, basically, he was so tired out and pooped, but he says moving forward, if we were to do the show again, he would try to schedule things so that basically he can go, later and not have it hit him as hard. All right. Now, to be honest, I enjoyed the show. All right. I did. We got through it. It was fun. There was a lot of wrestling talk. There was other drama talk as well. I do feel like we had some chemistry. I do actually feel like the wrestling talk was good. He had a lot of interesting, informed things to say about wrestling, which was great. And I think he only said one slur. Only one insanely insulting, over-the-top slur that's not allowed on YouTube. So we already had to edit the show. So the first thing we did when the show went offline, had to edit the show. Because you can't let that stay on YouTube, right? If you want the unedited version, it should be sitting on Kick. You could watch that. But I had to take that, what do you do? It's on YouTube. Like, oh, man. Well, and he by the way, he did apologize for that as well. He's like, yes, I'm not used to being on YouTube. And I let the one word slip. And I'm sorry for that. I said, I get it. It's not, it's not like you were doing it constantly. And you obviously tried to correct yourself, too. It wasn't like, you just didn't care. He did care. Now, at the same time, yes, I realize he did go off on other tangents. He was constantly ranting about the looks of women and things like that. As you could tell, that's totally not me. And if anything, I think the dynamic was working because he was the guy who was like over the top, almost like, I would say this. He was like the old school me in a lot of ways, if you think about it. Didn't care what he said or did, right? Let it fly. Saying all these absolutely exaggerated, ridiculous things about women and things like that, right? Like that was him. And that's how I used to be back in the day. In the early days of YouTube, when I was there, I literally would try to do absolutely as much over-the-top commentary as I possibly could. It was always racial, sexual, every swear word I could fit into my mouth, I would fit into my mouth, right? But that was because I knew that I had a certain kind of audience and I was trying to cater to them. It was kind of like this teen audience that was, let's push the envelope and let's see how far we can go with this, right? How extreme we can go and what we can get away with on YouTube. And people would be talking about it. Gee, did you hear what DSP said last night in his playthrough of Assassin's Creed 2? That was kind of the shtick and the point back then. And it worked. That's what got me my early notoriety on YouTube. Now, here we are, 17 years later. I have grown, evolved, and changed as a person. I'm happily married. I don't have constant, immature, ridiculous thoughts in my head anymore. I've changed for the better. My content, in my opinion, is much better today than it used to be. A lot of people disagree, but we're in a different time and a different era, and I'm doing the kind of stuff that I want to do, and people like it. I'm successful at making this style of content. Get it? But it was funny doing the show with Ethan where he was like, old DSP. He even said, he says, you have that moniker, the King of Hate. I wish that I could have that moniker. Because he wants to be able to be like the old DSP. But the thing is, the old DSP doesn't fly. The old DSP is outdated. The old DSP is such from a different era that back then it worked. It doesn't work anymore. At least, especially if you want to be a YouTuber, you just cannot be like that. You get it? So anyway, I felt the dynamic worked, but I do feel like a couple, important improvements would have to happen to continue working with Ethan Ralph. The first would have to be, we basically tried to keep the show contained to 2.5 hours. It definitely went way long, and that's on me. I let it ride, which I felt like I should have done the first time I'm with this guy, is let it ride. Let's have some commentary that's not wrestling. Let's go back and forth and see our dynamic and see how it works. And I think that was a good thing, but it led to a lot of rambling and a lot of tangents that made the show go too long. That was number one. Number two, we absolutely have to make sure that there's no over-the-top language and slurs and things. If you're on YouTube, you just can't have it. They don't allow it, right? So that's the deal. Moving forward. Now, the show had the most views of any episode of SMARK Guys ever. First episode of SMARK Guys, 7,164 views. Then we varied in views between 4,000 and 5,000, kind of up and down, depending on the week and what we were doing. It did actually really slow down at one point in mid-February. But then we took a break and came back, and it jumped up again. And then I went solo for a week. And then there was the week before, and then there was last week, as you can see. By far, the most viewed episode of the show that I've done. Now, to be honest, all right, every moron on the internet was trying to mess with the show. We had people coming and spamming with bots, which I completely ignored. If you didn't notice, I basically just didn't look at chat at all. I wanted to have a good show. I was like, I'm not going to let this chat, influence me or whatever, okay? Then we had people who were view botting the show, which I do not condone and I would never, ever do. View botting is completely worthless on YouTube. For those who don't know, view botting doesn't help on YouTube at all. YouTube just recognizes it and just deletes the views after the fact. You don't get ad revenue for it. You don't get anything for it. It really doesn't help you in any way. So view botting on YouTube is a complete waste of time. I don't know why anyone would ever do it, but some idiot was view botting us, probably to try to get attention on us, hoping that, Ethan would say something that would get me banned from YouTube, although it didn't happen, luckily. So in reality, 100%, this is the most popular episode of SMARK Guys since the show started. Is this surprising? Honestly, not really. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. All right. Reason number one, when I restarted SMARK Guys back in January, it was a gamble. No one knew if the show was going to be good. No one knew if it was going to work out. And the fact that I was doing it with one half of Kino Casino, yes, there was some appeal there, but let's be honest, you had already seen me interact with Kino Casino several times over the course of the months before, whether it was me appearing on their show, us doing the co-op commentary on the Rich documentary, us playing games together, etc. It wasn't an original first-time thing. It was something that had already been done, just now it was going to be a different format, correct? So there you go. It was popular. Don't get me wrong. That first episode getting over 7,000 live stream views is excellent. But at the same time, it's never going to go absolutely crazy when it's not a first time thing, right? So to be honest, I think the reason that this episode got so popular is very simple. Ethan Ralph, DSP, first ever crossover. There's that air of unpredictability. What's Ethan going to do? How's Phil going to react to Ethan and what he says? Is Phil going to dump Ethan from the show like he dumped Review Tech just about a week and a half before or whatever? There was all this kind of stuff that was going around, right? I think it went probably as well as it was going to go because I feel like if Ethan had held back 100%, the show would have been boring. But if he had gone full-fledged forward, the show would have been canceled. You know what I mean? It was kind of like just the right balance. Obviously, I would have preferred if there was no slur, and I also would have preferred if he didn't get so tired by the end of the show, because if you didn't notice, he started going off on tangents, and I had to rush the end of the show. That was the number one criticism, and I 100% agree with everyone on this. The end of the show, the last 30 minutes, was rushed, and it had to be, because I had to finish the show on time, and we had to still cover most of Monday Night Raw. And I was like, if we don't get through these results, we'll never finish the show. So I know a lot of people were like, man, you were just basically reading results. You guys were barely doing commentary. I know we had to get through the show. All right. The next time, if and when there is a next time where Ethan appears on Smart Guys, we'll do it a little better, where we won't have as much off the cuff intro banter. We'll try to keep it moving a little bit better. All right. And we'll get to the point where hopefully we'll not have to rush through the end of the show. We can take our time with the commentary. You know, who knows? Because we don't even know what we'll be commentating on the next time that he appears. Could it be WrestleMania? Could it be a show after? I don't know. I don't even know what we'll be doing commentary on, right? So I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. If you didn't see it yet, it is live. It is the featured video over on the DSP Reacts channel at DSP Reacts. I hope that you'll give it a look. Thank you to those who have. Please leave comments. Let us know. Again, I'm reading all those comments and taking in all of your input on how the show went and all of that. But thank you. We unpacked 4 different packs of Topps cards on the show because I raised so much. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for everything initially here. Let's see how it now goes, because for the next couple of weeks, all right, it's going to be some fun other co-hosts. We're going to see how they go. All right. And we're going to go from there. Let's see, because next week we got a new co-host on Thursday night. And then we got a different co-host next Thursday. And then it's WrestleMania. What I'd like to do is basically, after we've had 3 co-hosts, see all the different feedback and reactions we've gotten. And then I'd like to say, hey, maybe we could do a special event for WrestleMania. But I'm not sure how I want to cover WrestleMania yet. I mean, we don't even actually know officially all of WrestleMania yet and how it's going to go. I very well may do one super show. Maybe I'll do a daytime stream that's like an ultimate WrestleMania Smart Guys super show where I cover all of WrestleMania in one. So let's see how it goes over the next couple of weeks. So if you like that show, I hope you'll tune in to the next couple of weeks. And by the way, for the record, every person who's been saying, I know who Phil's guest hosts are, is a liar. Literally no one knows who my guest hosts are at all besides them. They're the only people who know who the guest hosts are. And it's going to be interesting. Let me put it this way. I did my best to line up the most variety of lineup of 3 people I could find. All right. Now, Ethan was first because he was the one who spoke up first publicly. Everyone was screaming, Ethan Ralph, Ethan Ralph. And if I didn't do him first, all you would have heard of was get Ethan Ralph on the show for the next 2 weeks. Now that he's been on, now we can focus on the next 2 co-hosts. Okay. So let's see how it goes for the next couple of weeks. Then we'll have the WrestleMania and we'll figure it out. All right. I'll talk to everyone and try to figure out the show and everything and go from there.